So, and this is better so then you can ask me more questions. Okay, so this is an introduction to landscape design. I guess the first thing that you're going to want to do when you're looking at your landscape project is, are you going to want to do it yourself, or are you going to want to hire a designer? And it depends on how big the project is, what's going to go into it, if you want to do patios, if you want to do fire features, water features, that sort of thing. So if you're going to do it yourself, you want to think how big your project is and say, okay, do I have a weekend to set aside? Can I go to the plant center, get everything I need, come back and just do it all in a weekend? And if that's you, then what you're going to want to start with is following the design process that's laid out in this pamphlet. Bring your site measurements, your ideas, pictures into the plant center, and then have someone here help you finish the process. Say, okay, this area we want this, and then they'll help you pick out the plants that are going to best suit your needs. So you don't necessarily have to have plant knowledge, you just have to have your idea of the project, where you want your project to go. A professional designer would come out to your house and give you a full scope of work. So you would pay them for their services, and then they would design the whole thing for you, give you drawings, give you proposals to have a company come and install the whole project. And so it's all done for you and you don't have to lift a finger. So, starting with the design process, a residential site, you want to think about everything as a series of rooms. You have your entry, which is the first thing that people see when they come to your home. You have a back patio. Maybe you want a space that you can either relax, maybe you want to work out there, maybe you want to entertain, have dinner, family gatherings. You want to kind of decide what is your project. You know, is it going to be a landscape bed, planting bed, or is it going to be an entertainment outdoor space, an outdoor room? Okay. The design process is laid out on the top here. You can see the 4 main steps that you're going to want to follow. You have research and preparation, the design process, important design aspects that you want to consider while you're going through the design process, and maintenance. You want to consider everything that's going to have to go into the project once you're done. So starting with research and preparation. Like I talked about, you want to set your goals. So do you want just a planting bed? Or do you want a patio that you can sit out, or do you have an existing patio that you need to expand? You just want a border, maybe you want some screening, whatever you're looking to do, you want to know at the start, okay, these are my goals for this project. Next, you want to prepare a base map. And this can be as simple as taking a couple of measurements of the area that you're looking to do plantings in, or if you have a plot plan of your house, a mortgage survey, then you have the dimensions of your house if you were looking to do something like a patio, entry walkway, anything like that. Next, you're going to want to do an inventory and analysis. First, your inventory is going to say, okay, what do I have to work with? I have a water issue, I have a sun issue, I'm having no sun in this area, or I have a lot of sun in this area. You need to know exactly what your site is like as it is now, so you can design according to your existing conditions. And then your analysis would be, okay, so I have a shady site, so I'm obviously going to need shade-loving plants, or I have a really sunny site and maybe I want to add some shade so I can have a nice seating area out in my patio. So you need to kind of make these determinations when you start your project. And then you go into a design development diagram, which is the first stages of the design step in this process. And the picture in the pamphlet kind of shows a rough, oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
There you go. That plant's not going to stay long either, though.
No, yeah, it's a little guy.
That little thing's going to go over too.
So in this pamphlet, you'll see this image here on the inside. And what this is basically doing is, this is your first step in the design portion, your functional diagram. Okay, if you have a larger area, say you want to do a backdrop to your lounge area, say you want to have a patio there for just seating, a family gathering. And then say you have, you want a border here, note where your circulation patterns are going, and just kind of sketch it all out in a really loose format. And it doesn't have to be exact, it doesn't have to be to scale. It's just your notes on what your goals and kind of laying it out on the paper would be. Next, you're going to want to do your preliminary design, which is going to apply the different design aspects, including the design principles, form, and spatial composition. And we'll get into that after I talk a little bit more about a master plan. So after you've done this, you'll come up with a master plan. A designer would come up with a scaled computer or hand drawing of the final layout, like a photo on the front here. So that would be a master plan. It calls out your plant materials, it calls out where everything should go. You could do layout plans, and that's a more formal document for a contractor to come in and install the project. Now, after you have everything installed, you want to consider your maintenance. So the irrigation, fertilizers, you want to consider weeding that you might have to do, in plant maintenance and any kind of deck maintenance, replacing old parts, replacing old retaining walls that might be falling apart. These are all things that you want to consider because that's something that you'll need to budget for. So now going into the preliminary design, following the design aspects, we'll start with the design principles. So you want to have a direction for your project. You don't just want to throw everything on paper and say, you know, okay, I want this, and this. You need to have some kind of an order. So starting with order, think of it like a branching pattern of a tree. You have some that are upright, you have some that are sprawling, you have some that are kind of irregular, and the branching pattern determines what the tree is going to look like. So that's your backbone, your framework would be your order. And things that determine order could be symmetry. So do you want a symmetrical design? Do you want it to look the same on both sides? Do you want to have something more asymmetrical? You know, you have a focal point on one side and some kind of lower plantings on the other and then a higher point on the other, so it's asymmetrical. Or do you want to do a mass collection, just a grouping of different objects? It's something that you want to consider for your order is, do you want it symmetrical, do you want it more loose, or do you want it massed in groups? So next would be the unity. And the unity would be all of the elements in the design look like they were meant to go together. So it's not, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's all cohesive. It looks like it was meant to go together. And for unity, that would mean things like dominance, creating a focal point. So you have one focal feature that you want to look at, but where everything else includes things like repetition, using some of the same elements like the boxwood here, repeating the boxwood, and then having a focal like the forsythia with the yellow. So you have repetition and an accent behind. And then interconnection would be elements linking together. So if you had two planting beds, maybe you want boxwood around this side, and maybe you put boxwood on another side to link the two spaces together if you had a walkway in between. So now the whole design looks like it's together because you're repeating a similar element. And then another really important thing to remember is the unity of 3, and also not only 3 but odd numbers. When your eye sees 2 objects, just 2, you have a tendency to split them in half and see one or the other. But when you have 3, you tend to see them as a group. 3s, 5s, or 1s are what you want to look at when you're doing the planting layout. So you want to have that grouping, that cohesion, that unity. The next one for the design principles would be rhythm. And you think of rhythm as you don't necessarily, depending on how big, you don't see an entire design instantaneously. You see parts of it, you walk through it, it's all about timing and movement. So you want to have something that's going to have some kind of dynamic aspect to it, where some things like repetition. So you repeat the elements, and so it's you have a line of your boxwood here, then maybe you have a walkway, and then you have another line here. So you're experiencing different parts of the design, but you're repeating different parts of the design through the whole composition. Another thing would be alternation. So you have a tall, like a tall juniper tree, and then you have a mixture of plantings, and then you have another tall juniper, and then you have a similar mixture, and then another tall juniper. It's that repetition that links the entire design together and makes it cohesive and makes it dynamic. So you have, different elements that your eye will follow through the whole design as you experience it. And then same thing, gradation. You could do lower elements that gradually build up to something taller, and that leads your eye from one aspect of the design to another. So those are some design principles that you want to think about when you're laying everything out, to keep it cohesive, to keep it unified. And then form and spatial composition are things that you want to think about together, and that's something that you're going to do when you're finalizing the design. So say you have your planting bed and you have an existing patio. You're going to want to match the style of that existing patio. If it's a rectangular or a diagonal or angular design of the patio, you're going to want to do a similar angular design for everything else that goes along with it. Same with a curved patio, curvilinear design. You want to keep everything cohesive so it works together. It looks like it's meant to go together. And spatial composition is the 3D aspect of your design. And so that would include, if you wanted your patio to have more shade, you need to think about having a taller element that will provide the shade. So that's giving you more of your, like an outdoor room, more of your vertical and overhead planes, if you will. So thinking about those two together, how your space should work as a whole. So that's an overview of the design process.
Now, Leah, I have a question.
Yeah.
I just purchased a home. We need to rip out all of the landscape and start over.
Okay.
But I need to do it in phases. I can't afford to do it all at one time.
Right.
So if I want to create something that looks nice now, that I continuously add to, where do you start? Do you start with the tree? Do you start with the shrubs in the front? Like, how do you...
I would first start and make sure to plan the whole thing, or plan your goals at least. Say, my end goal in 3 to 5 years, I want to have my backyard be like this. And then say, okay, what is the most important aspect? Probably if you want to do a patio or a deck, the deck or patio is going to be the first thing you want to do. Okay, so now you have at least somewhere you can sit out on, you can put some pots out on. If it's a front landscaping where you just want to do it in sections, it would probably depend more on the circumstances, but so because you don't want to do one part and have the rest look like it's not matching, or like it's old. You have the old area on one side and then you have everything new on the other. If you have things that you have existing that you can work with, say you want to do your hedge lines first and maybe add your trees, because your trees will take time to grow, and so that's something you want to consider, saying, okay, I'll add my trees now, and then in my 3 to 5 years my trees are going to look great, and then I can plan to plant my shade underneath that tree. So if you plant the tree after you had planted a garden bed, now all of a sudden that tree is introducing a shade element, and maybe those plants were doing okay with all the sun that they were getting. So I would start with your trees and then your shrubs and see what you have existing that you can work with. Say you have something in the back it's okay, it's not what you love, but you can do your shrub line in front of it and then come back and do behind the shrubs later.
And then how do you determine sun exposure?
Well, first, find your north. Find your north and look at, where if you're southern facing, you're going to get a lot more sun because of the tilt of where we are geographically. And I mean, you can look and see outside if you were home and you wanted to see. You want maybe 4 to 6 hours for full sun. Anything less than 2 is full shade. And then in between you have plants that can go either way or in the middle. But I would look at where your north is and see where that pattern of the sun is going and see, okay, you say here, I have a crevice of my house here, it's gonna be, your sun's coming, it's gonna get a lot of morning shade, and then when the sun gets to here, if it's southern facing, you're gonna get a lot of afternoon sun. So that would be a moderate range sun plant. But something that's gonna be on the north side of your house, and that's gonna be in a corner, you want something that's full shade. Yeah.
I have the front of my house, one bed. Half of it is almost full shade, and half of it is sun. How can I make that look like one?
Look like one.
Together?
Right. Do you have any kind of trees there, or what is making it half shade, half
We
sun?
have a very large Japanese maple.
Okay. Okay. You can mix them in if you use similar colors and similar textures. So popping in, you know, a purple here with like a purple lilac, or keeping a similar color scheme, staying in your warm colors, staying in your yellows, staying in your reds, staying in your oranges, or staying in your cool tones, staying in your blues, your purples, your greens. Pick a similar color theme and then have a similar tiered effect with different plant materials. So that's an easy way to thematic them together, and then maybe incorporate a hedge line that can handle both the sun and the shade, and you know, bring it across, and then have your dynamic different plants behind that. Any other questions?